Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mack. And tonight, our Cleveland Cavaliers took on the Charlotte Hornets for, if I'm not mistaken, the first time this season. Sounds crazy to suggest that, but that's the reality if I'm reading this correctly. If memory does not defeat me here, this is the first matchup that the Cavaliers will have had against the Charlotte Hornets. With the second coming up just in a few days on Wednesday, the 27th, and then they will have one final showdown with them on April 14th. But moreover, the point, man, is it was just good to get back into the win column. Cavs won by the score of 115-92 in a game that really just got away from Charlotte in that third quarter and beyond. And Cleveland decided to pour it on down the stretch, but overall, it was really just good to get back into the win column because this team has been struggling as of late. And I get it, man. This is a 10-win team, right? Well, not 10-win team. This is a 17-win team in Charlotte that, they're lottery bound. They're lottery bound for a reason. They don't really truly pose a threat to anybody, from game to game. I know they always say, any given Sunday, that type of idea. But this is a team that Cleveland has to beat, right? Despite not having Donovan Mitchell, still not having Mastery, still not having Dean Wade out there on that floor. You got to go out there and beat the teams that you are supposed to beat. And tonight's matchup against these 17-win Hornets, no different. That said, I couldn't help but feel like this team, this could have gone either way tonight. That's how it felt. It kind of, at least early on, it kind of felt that this could have gone either way. And then we had a Marcus Morris senior ejection early on in the game, and that just kind of served to galvanize this group, and they really started to gel and come together, and we saw them put together a really solid close to the second quarter, and they would carry that on into the second half when the likes of Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley and Darius Garland really started to click, right? And that is the thing. Like, from an individual standpoint, this team has just been absolutely it's been frustrating coming off that just lopsided defeat at the hands of the not the Milwaukee Bucks, the Miami Heat. I was beside myself because we watched head coach Eric Spoelstra just run circles around Cleveland and JB Bickerstaff to boot. And I was just thinking to myself, man, this is the worst loss of the season. This is the lowest that I have been on this team in a very, very long time after that loss. And I'm just thinking to myself, man, just to get back into the win column, that would be nice because this team has to find a way to just realize how good it can actually be sans these injuries. We get it, right? Mitchell's out. That is the stall that stirs the drink. He makes everything happen. He makes this team a contender when he's out there and healthy, in my opinion. And when he's not, things have been a struggle. Thanks in large part to many things, right? Injuries definitely played a part, though people love to say that as an excuse and not necessarily an explanation. I feel like it's a little bit of both, right? Depending upon the context that you are viewing it in. And for the Cavs, often it seems this season, people just view those injuries as more of an excuse than anything. When the Cavs have the seventh most games missed to injuries in the NBA league wide. And the thing that I've always thought to myself is, hey, if you don't understand that, if you feel like that's an excuse, just take into account who is actually not out there, right? Now, starting yesterday, first half of this back-to-back against Miami, we got Evan Mobley back. And that made me feel a hell of a lot better about, the postseason run that we're ramping up for. And then we got our asses kicked. And I'm like, well, man, that just fucking sucks. We're still without Donovan Mitchell, who I said again is the straw that stirs the drink here. And with that being the case, all we can really do outside of just using these injuries to fall back on is just to find little things to work on as these guys work themselves back into the rotation. And one of the things that I have been clamoring for is some consistency from the likes of Darius Garland. Tonight, Darius, it was a much, much, much better outing from him as he would put up a double-double on the night, 15 points, 4 boards, 10 assists, just looking like a playmaking machine out there and putting guys in their spots. And he had the play of the game towards the end there where he went to secure a ball that looked like it was going to be heading out of bounds, chased it down, threw it back in bounds, ran back on the court, had a smile on his face, kind of danced a little bit, and then got the ball right back and drilled a triple on the move. Clearly, you could tell that the funness, the Darius was just having fun. And that just has seemed to be lacking from this team in these last couple of matchups. Just have not seen that same type of energy, that same type of fun, that same type of mentality that we've become accustomed to this season. And I know a lot of that has to do with Donovan not being out there because it's a real thing, right? The mentality that Donovan brings to the table, that winning mindset, it is truly missed. And the Cavs just haven't seemed too often like they have been playing inspired basketball. They don't seem to be having a lot of fun out there. And I felt like they got back to that tonight, albeit against an inferior opponent. So, take from that what you will. But this was important. Getting back into the win column after you've just been struggling very, very hard lately. It's good. And that's essentially what this game is. It felt like a tune-up, right? It felt like getting your body right. It felt like getting shit together. And hopefully they can use this and they're turned right back around and start building upon it, right? They have another matchup against Charlotte on Wednesday. Like I said, and hopefully they can use that to further propel themselves and to get into gear as this postseason nears and to hopefully get these guys back in working shape. But we got to take it a game at a time. And that's the mentality that I have right now. That's the mindset that I have kind of put myself in, is now just taking things a day at a time. Because as I've often said, it's so, so important to not get too high or too low on this team. They can have a rousing win like they did tonight. And you look at the context that it came in, right? Did it come against an opponent above 500 or a solid opponent? No. Did any one individual performance stick out? Yes, a couple of them did. But at the same time, you look at it through the lens of, well, they just came off a very, very disheartening performance against a very well coached Miami Heat team. And you're like, okay, who is this team? I don't know. And that's the thing, right? I want to believe that this group is capable of big things, but as of right now, I'm just taking shit a day at a time because I just don't know which version of the Cavaliers I'm going to get, right? I'm very, very happy that they were out there and they performed adequately and they were able to take care of business tonight. But again, it's the Charlotte Hornets. So I cannot get too high and nor will I get too low. I'll admit I was pretty low after last night's loss. But I try and tell myself, don't get too high, don't get too low, because this is the regular season. And at the end of the day, they are no longer being judged upon what they do in the regular season. Sure, you have to win the games to get playoff seeding right, to get into the highest seed possible, and to put yourself in a good position, right? To have a good matchup. But at the end of the day, nobody's judging this team on what they do in the regular season anymore, especially JB Bickerstaff. He's being judged about postseason success. And so that is why I say to myself, don't get too high, don't get too low. Take it a game at a time. Try and take little things and point to and say, hey, this may or may not work in the postseason. One of the things that I feel like is going to work is a aggressive Evan Mobley, who we saw go out there tonight. He was still on that minutes restriction. He played just 25 minutes tonight, but in those 25 minutes, this man was able to score 17 points, grab 7 boards, and dish out 8 assists while going 8 of 12 from the field. And I love it. And one of the things that a couple of the sequences that we saw out of him tonight was him just driving the basketball, being aggressive, just throwing his body into guys. One of the drives that he had kind of a, I don't think he intentionally did it, but he kind of elbowed Grant Williams, which I didn't really care. You love to see something like that. He put Grant on his ass. He went out and then he scored a uncontested bucket at the rim. And I love to see that out of Evan Mobley because far too often people have called him soft. I think he has no business being down there in that painted area because he just can't handle the beating that 4 and 5s take. The opinions that people have just shelled out in regards to him and doled out in regards to him have just been sporadic and across the board. Like they're very, very wide ranging in regards to whether how high or how low they are on Evan Mobley's development, especially from an offensive standpoint. But tonight was a step in the right direction, especially coming off of his latest absence. We need him to build up that confidence, and being on that minutes restriction, seeing him kind of stuff the stat sheet, that felt good, no matter the opponent out there. And not only him, but to see Darius Garland kind of round things out because he's really, really been struggling as of late. Again, 15 points, 10 assists, 6 to 12 from the field, and just 2 of 6 from 3-point range. But he was out there putting guys in the best possible position to succeed and to make baskets, especially Jarrett Allen, who also had a big night with 17, 13, and 4, including 7 and 9 from the field. Just seem to be on the same page. And I know with Mitchell being out, one of the things that we were all hoping for is that Darius and Jarrett could find that same level of chemistry that they once had during their all-star season, right? Where it just kind of seemed like those two are always on, always making plays for one another, whether it be Jarrett Allen, with his uncharacteristic DHO passes to Darius Garland, or Darius Garland making plays as lobbing that basketball up there. Just was hoping for them to find that chemistry. And tonight, at least for tonight, it was there, right? We just need that to be more consistent. And that's been the problem, right? We need that consistency, especially heading into this postseason run. And as long as they can do that, when you add Donovan Mitchell back into the equation, I would only hope that things got even better, right? Because I think what we all hope for is that the Cavs have enough options to be able to stagger. And so Darius has chemistry with Jarrett, and then Donovan has chemistry with Jarrett. And the same thing can be said for Evan Mobley, right? And when you're able to stagger the minutes of some of these guys, you're going to get to a point where you have a pretty good 5 out there at any point in time. You have a pretty good multifaceted offense, and that's what we all want to see coming into the postseason, because these guys just far too often lately have seen discombobulated, like they're not running any particular type of offense, or they're not running enough sets, or they're just not really cohesive. And tonight we saw that cohesion, especially after the Morris ejection. And by the way, I'm just so happy that we have him on the roster. Some people are of the mindset that we signed him too late, or, the Cavs just didn't make any moves at the deadline, and that's been their downfall, which for me, I just can't understand still, because you got to remember at the deadline, the Cavs were still relatively healthy, right? Donovan was still here. Donovan was still healthy. Max was out there. Dean wasn't out. And so there just wasn't a lot of room for people within the rotation, or for any potential free agent signings or potential trade candidates that were realistically available. There just wasn't any room, right? And at least that's my mindset, is like, could a guy fight for minutes? Absolutely. But the Cavs just didn't have the trade ammo to make something like that happen, a realistic upgrade happen. And so I am so glad they were able to acquire Marcus Morris for basically next to nothing. And so I hope that they retain him, for at least another year after this, because the toughness that this man brings, and I understand the ejection tonight with the elbow that was thrown, but sometimes you just need some of that out there, and the Cavs just don't have that in bunches. You have maybe George Niang, maybe Max Strus brings a little bit of edge out there, but far too often it's just a lot of nice guys, or not enough shit talkers, right? You will never see Evan Mobley or Darius Garland, or really even Jarrett Allen, go out there and just look like they're just talking shit to somebody. You just don't have that. And I feel like in the playoffs, especially when things get a little bit more heated, you kind of need that. You need that out of somebody. You need an enforcer out there, is what I'm trying to say. And Morris, he seems to have that down. Not to mention the fact that he can still contribute on the court, right? Whether it be defensively at being able to take on certain matchups that the likes of George Niang can, or whether it be offensively, right? A guy who can reliably knock down a mid-range jumper, a guy who can actually space the floor out of the front court. These were important things to have, and that was one of the things that the Cavs were searching for, in fact, this past offseason, and that's part of the reason why they brought Niang in. Coming off those 5 straight seasons of 40% shooting or better. And so getting Morris for basically nothing, that's a win, right? That is a really solid signing, one that has a potential to pay off come the playoffs. Now, my biggest question still remains, like, if this team is able to come back to full strength, or some semblance of it, like, what does that playoff rotation look like? Especially now that you add Morris into the equation. But either way, it pays to have another option available, especially when you see that these guys have often dropped like flies and just really bunches out here, right? It just seems like one injury is constantly followed another, and so on and so on and on. So it's always good to have more available bodies. Good to see you guys out there. Lord Luke says, we just needed a win, man. Glad we got it. Good to see Spider on a bench in good spirits. It really is, man, because the vibes are at an all-time low right now. They just have been. I mean, even I felt it, right? You guys know that I consider myself to be one of the more optimistic of this fan base. But man, that loss yesterday had me heated. Man, I was just frustrated. And I was at a point where I'm like, man, fuck this team. I'm tired of watching the product that this team is putting out there. And I was really, really irritated. But then again, I just had to take a step back and say, you know what? It's a regular season game. Anything is possible. And as long as this team can come back with a better effort tomorrow against this Charlotte Hornets team, and they did, then I can reel myself back in and I can feel good. And the second part to what Luke says down here is, how do you think we can build off this win going forward? Well, step one, you have to replicate it again on Wednesday against this very same team, right? You have to replicate it. You don't have to beat their ass again like you kind of did tonight in that second half, but you have to, in my opinion, it's got to be another wire-to-wire victory, because this schedule has done us no favors. There's nothing really easy left. And with the guys that are still out, you have to be able to start building together good habits, right? You got to start putting together good habits. And I feel like the Cavs have just not been playing their brand of basketball, defense first, right? And they've looked very sloppy. That to me, in my opinion, that's not a incorrect thing to say. They've been very sloppy with the basketball lately. They've just not been in their sets quick enough. And that was one of the things that really pissed me off against Miami the other day, is where they just took them completely out of their element by going into that full court press, right? They had no answer for it. There was no adjustment. And then this constant flipping between zone and man defense. Spoelstra was in his bag, right? He was in his bag. He outcoached JB Bickerstaff and ran circles around him. And tonight, I just didn't feel like the coaching was as nearly as bad as it was, right? And some of this obviously boils down to the fact that the Cavs, again, the injuries, right? You can only do so much with the available bodies that you have, but at the same time, there are certain situations where JB has to put these guys in a better situation and better, and just really draw up things that actually accentuate the skill sets that some of these guys have. And tonight, I felt like that was done, right? Getting the ball, making a conceded effort to get the ball to Evan Mobley so he can get his rhythm back. That was very, very important, especially in the low post. Getting Darius Garland involved as a facilitator, awesome, right? And because we've seen Karis LeVert kind of take on more and more of a playmaker's role, especially with Donovan being out, putting that ball back in Darius's hands and making him make the plays, felt great. Dr. Claus 77 says, finally a win, great games from Niang, Mobley, Merrill, Ja, and more. Yeah, numerous really solid performances tonight. Nobody in particular was like head and shoulders above the rest. I mean, I guess you could say JA, you could probably say Evan, but this really felt like a team victory tonight, right? You have multiple Cavaliers score in double figures, two off the bench, and George Niang, who just constantly seemed to be making like clutch shot after clutch shot and just shutting down some Charlotte runs in this one. Niang just kind of highlight him a little bit. 17 points. He went 6 of 11 from the field, including a very, very good 5 of 10 from 3-point distance. And this is it, right? The good George Niang and the good George Niang has seemed to be around more and more often lately. Like we always joke and say when the good is, the good is really good, but the bad is really bad. That is more often than not the case for Niang. But I gotta say, man, since he was elevated into the starting unit that time, and I know he's coming off the bench again with Mobley back, but I think that time in the starting unit really, really, really did a lot for him because he's really been giving the Cavs some good stat lines lately. He's really been playing some of the best basketball that he has all season. And we know that he is what he is from a defensive standpoint, but it's been good. I mean, yet another another outing in which he finishes with double figures, and it is starting to become more and more of a common occurrence for him. During this season, he's finished with double figures, in 38 games now. He's at double eight figures in 38 games this season. And I feel like his time in that starting unit has really, really elevated that. It's given him his confidence back. The shot is now falling, and tonight's going to help, right? He's up to 37% on the season from 3-point range prior to tonight's outing. And tonight going 5 of 10 from the field or 5 of 10 from 3-point distance, that's definitely going to help. But for him, that's exactly why we acquired him, right? The ability to space the floor with volume. And that's probably the most important part of that sentence is the volume with which he has been able to knock down that three ball. Right now, on the season, including tonight's performance, he is now up to 37.4%, and he's getting closer and closer and closer to yet another 40% season. I don't think he'll get there. Just not enough games in the season, but outings like tonight prove why moving forward, especially in the postseason, why he is important because he spaces the floor at a very, very vital position out in that front court, and he gives the Cavs the ability to have one true big out on the floor and have a floor spacing four. That's important, right? Especially with Dean not being healthy. I love it. I see a comment down here that I kind of like. LeVert, lucky 7s across the board, 7 points, 7 assists, 7 rebounds, but didn't shoot well. And that's been the case for LeVert. This is from a efficiency standpoint. He's not had the greatest season, but when you're talking about the impact that he has out there, because especially without Donovan Mitchell being available, he does give them another guy capable of putting the ball on the floor, making plays for others. The counting stats look good. 13.7 points, 4 boards, 5.3 assists on the season. But my God, the efficiency with which he is doing so has not been great at all. It has not been kind to him. He is now shooting just 41% on the season, including 31.7% from 3-point distance. Not too much better at the free throw line either, 74.7%. And here's the thing in regards to LeVert, right? We know that he has consistency issues in terms of shooting the basketball. That dates back basically his entire career. But one thing that I can say about LeVert is that whether or not his shot is falling, he has constantly this season and in last year, right? Especially to close out last season, he has constantly found ways to make himself impactful, whether that be on the defensive side of the ball, making some timely steals out there, or playing some very, very tight and one-on-one defensive man coverage, or making plays, right? Setting guys up with the dump off pass, with the kickouts, his drive and kick game, or just making that extra pass. He's constantly found himself doing or making the right play. Tune in also says, I wanted him to win 6-man, but he won't. With that being said, yeah, it sucks, right? I feel like he's put together, despite the shooting percentages, despite the efficiency, he's put together a 6-man of the year caliber year. But the guys that are directly in front of him have just been better, right? It's probably Pistol says The squirt keeps the energy and always looks in great condition late in games. I think that when you're talking about Levert, right, he is one of the most well put together Cavaliers on this squad, right? He is as athletic as they come. He has length. He can bother you on the defensive side using that length, and he is a guy capable of putting the ball on the floor and creating his own shot. And without having Donovan Mitchell out there, that is highly important. And I couldn't be any happier with the season that he has given us, despite the inefficiency. I will take that because he just adds in so many areas. And so having him out there tonight, although he finished in single digits, having 7, 7, and 7, that's pretty dope. And he was just 3 of 13. Don't let me forget that. He was just 3 of 13 from the field tonight, including 1 of 5 from three-point distance. But as long as you're able to impact the game in multiple areas and help offset the lack of shooting or shot making, I can live with it. So it was good. And then you get to the other player in the starting unit, and that was Isaac Okoro. And you guys know, man, there's not much I could say about Isaac Okoro that I have not already said about him. Right, he is having the best season of his career. He finished with 14 points, 5 boards, 3 assists tonight, 5-11 from the field, 3 of 7 from three-point distance. 3 of 7, right? Another game where he knocks down 3 triples. But the most important part always to me is like when this guy has the confidence to pull the trigger 7+ times from three-point distance, that's a W within itself, because there have not been too many games prior to this season when Isaac Okoro has taken that many triples. On this season now, that is actually just the 7th time this year that he has attempted 7 or more threes. And to me, that's important, because getting him the confidence to do that on a consistent basis, that's highly important. And that is what that is what earned him minutes, especially in the playoffs. Right now, one thing that people rarely talk about, especially in regards to Isaac Okoro in relation to the postseason, he actually performed well defensively last postseason against the Knicks. He held Jalen Brunson to 7 of 21 during the regular season, and those numbers were even better. I think it was 2 of 12, but I got to double check. He held him to an even lower mark in the postseason, but the problem was he just could not space the floor. He could not space the floor reliably. And so those minutes went to Cedi Osman. And we already, Cedi's basically chopped liver from a defensive standpoint, even though there were points at which Cedi kind of held his own. But clearly that is not a matchup that you do not want to see throughout the whole duration of a series. Isaac Okoro, on the other hand, if he can knock down the three-point shot, playing him in the postseason is basically a given. You have to. He is just too impactful not to, especially if he's knocking down that three-point shot. And the fact that he's been able to do that with career or peak efficiency this year makes me feel really, really good about his chances of having a really good postseason showing. And we all know that that's the one thing that he needs, especially in a contract year. He has to be able to go out there and prove that what we have seen from him during this regular season, he will be able to replicate that and then some in the playoffs. Now, after tonight's outing, he is now shooting 38.9% from three-point distance, which is really, really, really respectable. Yes, good to see you back from your daddy duties. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm assuming that's what we heard from Mikey McNuggets the other day. I was supposed to appear on Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, but I got pulled away. Love when that happens. No shade to my wife, but got pulled away to perform my duties as a father, right? Putting the kids to bed, giving them baths, things of that nature. Not to pivot away from the Cavs, but yeah. Glad to come back to a victory, right? Because yesterday's loss to the Miami Heat just put me in a bad place. Like I already said, I think prior to saying that I was going to appear on that show the other day, that they were giving me basically nothing good to say. And if you all know me, if you've watched this podcast or listened to it for long enough, you know that I just hate I hate being negative about this team, but I've been more and more negative, more and more critical than I've ever been from this team as of late, just because they've put me in this spot where I'm just like, well, I want to be pissed at them. I want to be angry at them when they have performances like they did the other day. But then on the other side, I'm like, well, man, I get it. But last night was truly inexcusable. And so today they needed to get this victory as far as I'm concerned. If this would have been an L, vibes. I mean, I already said they're in the shitter right now. They're at an all-time low. Um, if they were not able to pull out a convincing victory tonight, it would have gotten even worse, right? If the Cavs won by, let's say, like 5, maybe 7 points, people would still be all over them because they would say it's just the Charlotte Hornets. And so even with beating them tonight, you still have people saying, well, this is just an inferior opponent. It doesn't mean anything. To me, it means everything, just because getting that win, getting back into the win category or the win column rather, that does a lot for your mentality, especially when you've been playing basketball the way that you have as of late. Tom K says, I just wish Cavs would play their basketball heading into playoffs. Feels like they play hard early and get injured late every year recently. It does feel like that, man. And I feel like Evan Mobley in particular, right? He has not been able to hold up throughout the duration this year. And so I hope that, knock on wood here, he had a good performance tonight. I hope that he is able to stay on the court. I hope there are no further issues with him. And we know Don's not back yet. Max is not back yet. And there's not really a timetable for some of these guys. Dean's not back out there yet. I just want them to get healthy. And so for me, in the meantime, you just got to win the games that you're supposed to win. And so I hope they're able to replicate this type of performance on Wednesday against this very same Hornets team. And you just take it a day at a time, take it a game at a time, and take it a possession at a time, because these Cavs, they're not playing with the same type of energy that they did at the beginning of the year. And some of that is understandable due to the personnel, right? But from a mentality standpoint, they just kind of seemed at times like they've even checked out, which it sucks, right? Tonight, that was not the case, but we need to see performances like tonight more and more consistently in order for people to truly believe that this team is back, right? And then as Tune In and Tom K are pointing out down here, there are other teams that are hot on their ass, right? Hot on their heels. The Knicks are right behind us. Magic are too, right? As you look at the standings here, and I use Bleacher Report, I'm going to stop using it because I feel like it just doesn't update fast enough. The Knicks are sitting at 43 and 28. I'm not sure if that's reflective upon tonight. And then you have Orlando here at 42 and 29. The Cavs, they're not far ahead. They do not have a big lead. I say all that to say they do not have a big lead on that third seed over either the Knicks or the Magic. The Cavs, they're not able to get their shit together consistently. They could easily fall down to that 5th seed, and that would be that, right? Not the worst thing in the world, but certainly not inspiring, right? If you're, as long as they're not heading into the play-in territory, I suppose, but it's tight as it's ever been in the Eastern Conference. And for me, I just need to see this team string together some wins for my sanity, right? Not because of social media, not because of the fact that, I believe that whatever they're able to do there in the regular season means everything, because truthfully it doesn't, right? We already know this team is no longer being judged upon what they do in the regular season. It's about how they perform in the postseason in all aspects. And because if not, a lot of things are going to change, right? We've already talked ad nauseum about how JB Bickerstaff will be the first person let go if they are not able to win a playoff series or more. And we've talked about possibly seeing this team having a big reshaping, whether that be Darius Garland or Evan Mobley being on the trading block and things of that nature. Although I don't agree with these things, I do have to admit that people, if the Cavs end up going out in the first round or something like that, that's probably something that will be on the table, especially if Donovan Mitchell puts pen to paper and signs the contract extension. And then that's a whole nother topic right there, right? If the Cavs get just completely roasted and outed in the first round, or they're not competitive at all in the postseason, selling Donovan Mitchell on the long-term outlook of this team becomes even murkier. I still believe that this core four can get shit done. Do I believe it's a championship team? I feel like they could get there. They're not there right now, but selling Donovan Mitchell on that is the ultimate goal here. And so far this season, it's really been a tale of two halves, right? The pre All-Star break was awesome, and there were definitely a lot of things to look forward to and feel good about. And then post All-Star break has just been absolutely just atrocious, right? It has not been good. It has not been consistent basketball. And the worst part about it is the Cavs just have not been healthy. And it leaves so many things unanswered, right? And I've had people mention to me, well, this essentially tells us everything we need to know about this Cavs team. They have no heart. They're pussies. They can't, they're not playing through injuries. They're soft, whatever. I've just heard a lot of different things. I'm just at the point now where I'm trying to tune a lot of these things out because it's hard to answer any of these questions without the full complement of players, or at least your starting five, right? When you don't have Donovan Mitchell, when you don't have Max Strus, who's a big part of this Cavs offense due to his ability to space the floor, whether or not he's hitting them efficiently or not, and then you didn't have Evan Mobley for a large stretch of time, it makes things hard to evaluate because the questions that you need to answer, like, does this starting five work? Does the backcourt pairing of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell work? Does the front court pairing of Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley be due to spacing concerns work? These are questions we can't answer, and questions we frankly we needed to have answered before going into the playoffs. Before you really only have a finite amount of time and a finite amount of games to actually answer some of these questions, right? And then the overarching theme here that I feel like is often not mentioned is the fact that even when they do come back, are they going to have enough time to find a rhythm? Are they going to be able to put down their best effort? Are they going to be able to be cohesive in enough time to win a playoff series? I know it's possible. I don't put it past them to be able to do these things, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that it wasn't a concern, right? And even as Tom K says, even they get all healthy, they will be so out of sorts reintegrating. Yeah, I mean that's essentially what I'm saying. So I'm glad you agree with me. It really is. It really is to me. I want this team to get healthy. That's step one. But step two is I want them to find that cohesiveness and chemistry. I want them to be able to put together solid stretches of basketball prior to going into the postseason. But that may not be possible because we just don't have a timetable on some of these guys on their returns, and we just don't know if there will be enough time during this late stretch in the regular season to actually do that. And so I'm just taking it a game at a time. I'm taking it a singular game at a time. And tonight's performance made me feel good. Wednesday's performance may not make me feel good. We'll have to see. I mean, that's just the point that I'm at with this team. I still believe on their long-term outlook. I still believe they can make some noise in the playoffs. But I'm at a point now where I need to see things like this more and more consistently. And as Tom K says down here, though, to evaluate Spider Garland or Mobley Allen, choices may need to be made with limited info if they bounce out first round. And yeah, I think it was Lima, right? Anthony Lima earlier, who I was conversing with, that basically said that Darius Garland and Evan Mobley have failed miserably in their auditions. I say that with quotation marks for in regards to Donovan Mitchell, whether or not they fit, or it would their ability to win a championship, right, with this team, right? And so for me, it's like it's incomplete. How can you truly judge Darius Garland's season? How can you truly judge Evan Mobley's season and say that they have failed miserably when we just don't have enough info, right? There's just not enough there to go off of. We can't say whether or not Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, based upon this year, because I feel like there have been individual developments in both regards. Evan Mobley with his defensive rebounding, and then Jarrett Allen out there just in many areas has played some of the best basketball of his career this year. And for me, it's just hard to make any of these choices or make a solid determination or say anything outright with any definitiveness when we just have such a small sample size of this starting five playing together. It sucks, but that's the reality of the situation, right? And the one thing that I did agree that he said, I did agree with that he said was that it may ultimately cost him Donovan Mitchell, and that is by all accounts possible, right? I don't think that's going to be the case. I still believe Donovan Mitchell ends up re-signing here long term, but I can't lie, right? And that this season may have robbed the Cavs of the proper evaluation that they need to make a real solid decision, and that sucks. And so that's just the point I'm at in regards to that. Tom also says Mobley 3-point shot development feels like it needs another year. Might not get it. And yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying, right? The Cavs may have just lost a year in regards to that. It may ultimately end up resulting in Donovan Mitchell not choosing to re-up with the Cavs. But if I'm Mitchell, I don't know if I'm finding a better situation than what the Cavs currently has right now. And it's all going to depend upon what he values most, right? Because at the age that he's at right now, doesn't probably want to sit through and wait for a guy to turn into a finished product. To kind of reference TuneIn's comment down here, Mobley is not a finished product. He most certainly is not. And many of these players on this roster are not. And maybe Spida's not of that mentality. Maybe he, as TuneIn also says down here, maybe he wants to win now. Maybe he doesn't want to sit and wait with the franchise for guys to get into their primes. And not just sit here and wait on potential to be realized. But if I'm Spida, I'm looking at what the Cavs have to offer, and I'm saying to myself, this is a place where, if guys can develop a little bit quicker, right? If I give this maybe another year, maybe it'll come to a point where this is a championship contender. And for me, I'm still of the belief that Mitchell will want to be here long term, but this is not going to be the season that you can point to say this is proof of why you should. That's all I'm trying to say. I know that was a mouthful, but that is the point that this season has driven me to, right? I came into it with, hey, there's a handful of guys that need to prove that they fit in this core, and largely some of those questions still remain unanswered. Some of them have been answered, but it still gets an incomplete for me because we just have not gotten a large enough sample size of this full complete starting five or really full rotation to say whether or not certain things have been answered. And I guess I'll leave it at that. Happy about tonight's win, make no mistake, but got to see it consistently. And so I hope they can replicate that, because consistency, building upon good habits, and heading into and not backing themselves into a playoff series against whatever opponent they'll have to be matched up with, that is not the way, right? We do not want to back into the playoffs. We do not want to stumble into the playoffs. That is the worst possible outcome, in my opinion. We want to finish strong, despite who's out there. And performances like tonight will go a long way, and that being the case. And so Wednesday, matching up with this same Charlotte team, I hope they're able to do that. But as I always tell you guys, if you'd like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you an invite. That said, go Cavs. Have a good night.